talk to somebody. Don't let what people say to you be what defines you. Talk to somebody and believe in who you are, because, you know, at the core, everybody is such an incredible human being. They deserve to be unique. They deserve to be individual. That uniqueness and individuality isn't a bad thing.
The glitz and glam is the fame, but it's the work backstage that makes the game. I'm Crystel and Bandal, your host. Come with me behind the lens and watch their stories unfold. Our next guest on Behind the Lens is a wonderful candidate for Miss World Australia for 2020. I can see that she's doing some incredible work to advocate for bullying, and I'm excited to hear more about the story behind it and the things that she's doing to contribute back into the community. Please welcome onto Behind the Lens, Ems Hardwicke.
Fat, ugly, stupid, worthless. Such simple words with such devastating consequences. It is so rare that I'll ever put my voice to anything, not because I don't feel things, believe in things, or have passion for things, but largely because I, for so many years, have thought I don't have words worth listening to and I don't have a voice worth hearing. But then I realised that's why I'm so passionate about campaigns such as Speak, Even If Your Voice Shakes, and Words Are Weapons. If I don't have the courage after nearly 44 years on this earth to stand up and say what I feel, what hope do our young people have of being able to stand up and tell someone they're being bullied? We need to educate the bullies that their behaviour is not okay, but equally important, we need to lend our strength to the young people and to those being bullied to say that it is okay to stand up and tell someone you're being bullied. Bullying needs to stop. Something needs to change. How many more lives do we need to lose before there's a change in society? Please lend your support and lend your strength to these campaigns. It is so important that the message gets out there and that we can save like young lives. Go to Words Are Weapons or Speak Even If Your Voice Shakes and lend your support. Help save a life today and put a stop to bullying.
Now, you have a very big background and experience in the events industry, but right now you're actually going to be competing for Miss Australia World for 2020, right?
Is correct, yes. Look, I've got 20 years experience in the events industry. I've been incredibly fortunate with my experience. I've worked in Australia, I've worked over in the UK, and it's a career that has amazing experiences, opened some incredible doors, and allowed me to meet some incredibly wonderful people throughout my career.
Well, I'm really excited to get into it because obviously we're going to get into how you got into pageantry, but at the moment, since you have lots of experience in the events industry, I'm kind of curious, was that always an industry that you wanted to be involved in ever since you were little?
No, funnily enough, when I was little, and look, I think my earliest memory was when I was about 10 or 11, I actually wanted to study forensic science. I've always had an interest in forensics and forensic science, and more so now in the forensic psychology of things, but I actually started my career in the construction industry and was made redundant at the ripe old age of 21, and just kind of fell into the events industry, and that's something that my career's always taken me down. So certainly wasn't planned, but it's been something that I've thoroughly enjoyed and has, as I said before, given me some amazing opportunities and allowed me to meet some really interesting and fascinating people.
And what was actually kind of like the turning point or when you fell into the jumped into the events industry? What was that moment? How did that happen?
Look, I couldn't really say what the defining moment was. I was actually studying marketing and public relations. And then just through meeting with a couple of people, I actually started working for the Royal Easter Show in a basic administrative role. And that then kind of rolled into an events role, obviously with the Royal Easter Show being a major event in Sydney. So it kind of just progressed from there, and I was a participant and a finalist in the Miss Australia Awards for the Spastic Centres when they were around, which was very events and public relations based. Mm-hmm. So that was the next stepping stone, and it kind of just evolved. So there was no real one defining moment where I went, I'm going to be an event manager. It just happened, and each job that I had and each step was just more and more into events, and basically been focusing on events pretty solidly for the last 20 years, which is kind of giving my age away, but
that's okay. We don't have to say specifically what age you are.
I'm happy with my age.
So you kind of just went with the flow and you went into events industry, and you've been there for a good strong 20 years.
Yes.
Did you have like a mentor? How did you get involved with so many events? Because you mentioned in our call before that you do lots of charity events. Sometimes you have some corporate events that you're doing. Sometimes you'd be organizing events overseas. How did you learn all these skills to manage an event successfully?
Look, organization's always been one of my really strong skills in my personal life, and that's the core of event management. One specific mentor, not so much earlier in my life, but certainly later in my life, I had a couple of really strong mentors, and probably when I joined Tour de Cure, Jeff Coombs and Sam Hollier-James, who were both the co-founders of Tour de Cure, I always joke that Tour de Cure is probably one of the best apprenticeships that I've ever had, just from the knowledge and the passion and you know, the forethought that Sam and Jeff had, and their passion for building the not-for-profit that they have now. Not-for-profit has always been close to my heart. It's something I've always done, and any time that I've moved out of the charity sector, I've moved back into the charity sector because I've missed it, and that's kind of where my career's always taken me. So look, no one specific mentor. I've just been very fortunate to have some incredible people in my life.
Oh, that's amazing. It's nice to hear that you're taking advantage of the people around you and actually using kind of the resources that you have instead of just sticking to one thing.
Definitely. And look, the one thing I'll say about events is you can learn the theory, but it's the on-the-ground practical experience that makes the difference.
Mm-hmm, that's very true. What would you say would be kind of like your favorite moments in your career in the events industry, do you think?
Look, there's been so many. I was incredibly fortunate when I was in the UK I was there for Marc's retirement race in Formula One, and I was also there for Lewis Hamilton's, starting season in Formula One. So, meeting people like that. I think I mentioned to you before that I also managed a charity polo match at which Prince William and Prince Harry played on opposing teams. So, that is such a unique experience, and being able to meet Prince William and Prince Harry in such a casual, relaxed setting, it was just a really unique experience and not something I ever thought I would have the opportunity to do. So they were probably a couple of key moments. But I've been so lucky, having been with Tour de Cure for 3 years, working with organisations such as Sir David Martin Foundation, where I got to hurl myself over a 33-story on the front of that building, and going on tour with Tour de Cure. I've just been so incredibly lucky. So I've had a lot of amazing experiences.
I can definitely imagine how many favorite moments you probably had, especially from the wide variety of events that you've mentioned that you help organize.
Absolutely. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Now, you also mentioned not too long ago, you were saying that you always found your way back into charity.
Yes.
What was it about charities that you always went back to?
Look, I think for me, it was, I wanted to get up every morning and feel like I was making a difference. So working for a charity was my way of doing that. It always meant that I knew getting up, doing what I was doing on a daily basis was making a difference in somebody else's life. It wasn't just getting up, going through the motions, actually touching somebody and making a difference in someone else's life, whether directly or indirectly. So I think that's what always drew me back. It's just something that's always been pretty close to my heart.
How long have you been involved in charities for? Like, were you doing it even before events?
No, well, yes and no. I guess my first stepping stone into the charities and not-for-profit world was my association with the Miss Australia Awards. That was a specific program that was run to raise funds and awareness of the Spastic Centres of Australia, now known as Cerebral Palsy Association. So that was kind of my first stepping stone into charities, and that's just when I knew where my heart was and sort of where I wanted my career to be.
That's wonderful, and you've just been continuing to go back into the charities ever since.
Absolutely.
Now, looking back into your career in the events industry as a whole, what would you say have been some of the common challenges that you face in the events industry?
Look, I think the biggest challenge, and this was primarily after 9/11 and the risk management around terror threats and bomb threats. It's one of those things that you never really want to have to think about, but unfortunately in today's society, it's something that has to be looked at as a risk point of view, and it's something that's included in every risk management plan. What do you do in the case of a fire, a bomb, all of those sorts of things. The events industry, it's such a big and it's such a growing at the moment. I think the biggest challenge that not only the events industry is facing, but everybody, is the current pandemic that we're in. And I know that the events industry will always come back stronger than ever, but I think the way that we manage events and the way that events are staged will never be entirely the same. So I think what we're facing at the moment is probably the biggest challenge I've seen in my career as an event manager. So how that goes, I mean, look, we don't know when it's going to end. I hope it's soon, but certainly the way events are managed and that sort of thing, and the controls that will be put in place just from a health and safety perspective will change the way that the events industry is run moving forward.
How has the pandemic affected the planning process of events?
It's pretty much put a stop to it. Look, it's one of those things that you can kind of take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Planning, you can't plan for what we're going through at the moment, essentially. And I think we still need to plan ahead, and we still need to plan to go back to physical events. But I think how we do that is going to be day by day. And I think it's going to be very much guided by, how we're controlling coronavirus, and also when a vaccine becomes available, because I think that's going to be a game changer. Or in fact, I know it's going to be a game changer.
That's true. Now, with the events industry essentially coming to a stop because of the current situation, the global pandemic, you've mentioned that it's important for them to continue planning one step at a time. I'm actually kind of interested as well to hear about your insight in people creating online events, like moving their whole events online. What's your take on it?
Look, I think there's definitely a place for that. I don't think it's something that can be ongoing completely online because, human beings are social beings. We need the physical interaction. So I think the time now is the right time for online and for virtual events. And I think that's certainly been successful and has allowed a lot of it to continue, just in a different format. Do I think that's going to be the way events are run from here on in? No, I don't think that. I think there'll always be a place for it, but I think physical events will always be our primary, way of interacting and socializing, and that's just the nature of humans and who we are. We like the social interaction.
Do you feel like it contributes to like our happiness? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a screen person. I read on a Kindle. On Facebook, social media, but I love nothing more than being face to face with somebody, sitting down, having a coffee face to face. So I think definitely social interaction contributes to everyone's happiness.
And I'm sure everyone right now, I know Victoria's gone back into lockdown, and everyone's being really cautious about where they're going. And I feel like everyone's really looking forward to the day that they can finally go out and socialize again without having to worry too much.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because we talk about social distancing, but I've seen a lot of the language change from social distancing to actually physical distancing, because we don't want to distance ourselves socially. It's more about the physical distance. So I actually prefer the term physical distancing. So, because I don't ever want to be socially distanced from my friends and family and those that I care about.
That's true. That's actually a pretty good take on it. Because, the social distancing that people refer to is just like a 1.5 meter radius from everyone. Now, if you could look back into your career as an entirety, is there anything that you would change?
I have to say no. Even if I've made bad decisions in my life or in my career, the one rule I have for my life is no regrets. Because to have regrets would be to change the person that I am. And I love the person that I am. And everything that I've done in my life has contributed to the person that I am today. And without each of those steps in life and in my career, then I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't have the beautiful family that I've got. I wouldn't have the amazing 6-year-old son that I've got. And so no, I wouldn't. Don't regret anything, wouldn't change anything. No regrets.
I love that. I love that life motto. I'm kind of curious, has your mindset always been that way, or did it take some time for you to reach that mentality?
I think it's always been that way. Growing up, I lived with so much self-doubt. I didn't believe in the person that I was. But I think in the back of my mind, there's always been, whatever happens in life, there's a reason for it. And I regret nothing that I've done. I regret no choices I've made. So I think it's always been there. And I've always got my strength from my mum. My mum's an incredibly strong woman and very independent woman. So as much as I grew up with a lot of self-doubt and lack of self-belief, I've never regretted anything.
And I can hear from you that you really love yourself at the moment, and to hear that you had a lot of self-doubt when you were younger. Do you have any advice for any young or any adults out there who are still having that kind of self-doubt, how can they overcome that to reach the self-love that you have for yourself?
Wow, that's a big one. Look, I suffered a lot of bullying going through high school. I was never the most popular, the prettiest, the thinnest, the smartest person in the room. I think the biggest piece of advice I can give people is talk to somebody. Don't let what people say to you be what defines you. Talk to somebody and believe in who you are, because, you know, at the core, everybody is such an incredible human being. They deserve to be unique. They deserve to be individual. That uniqueness and individuality isn't a bad thing. And if you're being afraid to tell someone, I think that's the biggest thing. And I know, look, when I was growing up, I had the luxury of going home after a day of school and shutting it out because we didn't have social media. Teenagers today and young kids today don't have that luxury. They, you know, it's with them 24/7, and they go home and they get on social media and they can't escape it. So my advice to anyone going through that, whether it be a young child, a teenager, an adult, is find somebody that you trust and talk to them. Don't hold it in, because by holding it in, it just manifests itself, and it leads to more self-doubt, and it just becomes a vicious circle. And by actually talking to somebody, it gives you the opportunity to, and this might sound really simple and naive, but it gives you the opportunity to voice what other people are saying to you, and it actually makes you realize how silly it sounds what they're actually saying to you. Because I look back on my life, and with the number of times I was told, you're not good enough, you can't do that, I look at the things that I have achieved, and I've achieved a hell of a lot in my life, and I'm proud of what I've achieved. But there are many people that told me I couldn't, or I wouldn't, or I didn't, or I wasn't good enough to do it. But I look back, and I think for me, that stubbornness to say, you've told me I can't, watch me, I'm going to. So it was a little bit of defiance on my part, I think. But yeah, look, the biggest piece of advice is find somebody you trust and talk to them.
A little bit of that competitiveness as well to make...
Not at all.
To continuously push yourself to become better.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've learned in years is the only person I compete against is myself. I don't compete against anybody else. And the only person I have to measure myself up against is me. And if I'm not happy with the person that I'm being, I'm the one that needs to change it. Nobody can change it for me.
That's true. From a young age, Em had already experienced bullying, which has brought in self-doubt, insecurities, and feeling like she wasn't good enough. This is a very common challenge for many of us, or maybe even everyone. But for her, she experienced it because of bullying. And now that she is a wife and mother of a 6-year-old son, she wants to do her best to educate others that bullying is not okay. And if you are a victim of bullying, that it's only temporary, and you need to be able to push yourself beyond these dark moments of your life, because there's greater things waiting for you at the other side of your path at the moment. I'm glad that she's taking and using her voice to be making a good difference in the world. I'm sure that she's going to be doing some really great stuff, especially with her organizational skills from the events industry. I can't wait to see what more she's going to be doing in the pageant industry and in the community. I hope that you all enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you all next time here at Behind the Lens.